Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we pull out the most surprising, insightful nuggets from interesting sources just for you.
Great to be diving in.
Today, we're tackling something we probably all feel we have a handle on. Metaphor.
Right, like, poetic stuff. Love is a battlefield, maybe. Strength like a storm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We think of it as, well, literary spice, a nice touch in a poem, but what if that's completely wrong?
Or at least not the whole picture.
Right. What if metaphors are much, much more fundamental, like the bedrock of how we think, speak? Maybe even how we build civilization itself.
That's a pretty mind-bending thought, isn't it? Taking metaphor from just words on a page to a core cognitive function.
And that's exactly the revolutionary question explored in George Lakoff and Mark Johnson's classic book, Metaphors We Live By.
It really is a classic. Huge influence in linguistics, psychology, cognitive science, you name it.
Their view is pretty radical. Metaphor isn't just linguistic flair, it's a basic human thinking ability. And get this, they argue it existed before language.
Whoa. Before language. That completely flips the script on how we usually think about thinking and talking.
Totally. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack how this thing that we often dismiss as just poetic language is actually so foundational.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
We're going to hit three key areas. First, how metaphor basically builds language. Communication wouldn't work without it.
Okay.
Second, how it's a core thinking ability tied to our physical bodies, actually.
Right.
We couldn't think abstractly without it.
Makes sense. Embodied cognition and all that.
And third, how it's the hidden scaffolding for our spiritual world, our culture, our civilization. Without metaphor, well, things would look very, very different.
Right. No civilization as we know it. It's a big claim. Let's break it down.
Okay, first up, metaphor as the architect of language itself.
Right. So challenging that common view. Most people see metaphor as, like you said, an occasional extra, something poets sprinkle in.
Yeah, like in Gilgamesh, calling his friend a swift mule. Stands out.
Exactly. But Lakoff's big insight was finding that our everyday language, the stuff we say without a second thought, is just saturated with metaphors. Tons of our basic concepts are built on them.
And he had this big aha moment, right, back in '78.
Yeah, the story goes he was in a seminar, and a student runs in, upset, crying, and says something like, "Our relationship has come to an end."
Which sounds totally normal. We say stuff like that all the time.
But Lakoff paused. He thought, why does a relationship have an end? What does that even mean?
Because it's not a physical thing that stops.
Precisely. He realized we unconsciously think about love as if it were a journey.
Ah, okay. Love is a journey. I see it now.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Think about it. Our love is at a crossroads.
Or we've hit a dead end.
Or we're going our separate ways.
Right. It's everywhere.
And crucially, this isn't just swapping one word for another. It's what they call a conceptual metaphor. It's mapping a whole system of concepts.
Okay, explain that a bit more. System mapping.
Well, road or journey is concrete. We get it physically. Paths, obstacles, destinations, maybe even vehicles. Love is abstract, much harder to grasp directly. So we borrow the structure, the logic of the concrete thing to understand the abstract thing, love.
So it's like a mental shortcut. We map the known onto the unknown.
Exactly. A collective unconscious process. It's like love can borrow all the rich meanings associated with journey, making our thinking incredibly efficient. Imagine trying to explain every facet of a relationship without that journey framework.
It'd be exhausting. You'd need a whole new vocabulary for every nuance. Okay, so love is a journey. What other big ones are there?
Oh, loads. A really common one is argument is war.
Argument is war.
Yeah.
Okay. How does that show up?
Think about how we talk about discussions, especially disagreements. I need to defend my position.
He attacked every weak point of my argument.
I shut down all her claims. We need a new strategy.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you don't even notice you're doing it. It's all military language.
Exactly. We conceptualize arguing as if it were combat.
So these conceptual metaphors are just baked into the language. But are they universal? Does every culture see argument as war or love as a journey?
That's a great question. And the answer, not necessarily. Some might be very widespread, maybe rooted in common human experiences, but others are definitely cultural.
Like what? Give me an example.
A classic one is time is money.
Oh, yeah. Spend time, save time, waste time, invest time.
We say it constantly, right? It feels totally natural. But think about it. Did people always equate time with money?
Probably not. Money's a much newer concept than, well, time itself.
Exactly. The concept of money came after time. This metaphor isn't innate. It's largely a cultural construct.
So where did it come from?
Lakoff and others suggest it really took hold in the Western world, especially after the Industrial Revolution.
Ah, okay. Clocks, schedules, factory work, time became a commodity.
Precisely. Time became seen as this quantifiable, limited resource you could budget, invest, or waste, just like money. There might have been older, poetic lines like, "The Chinese an inch of time, an inch of gold," but that was more literary.
It wasn't structuring everyday thought the way time is money does for us now.
Right. That pervasive, everyday, conceptual metaphor seems to have solidified later and then spread globally, influencing how many languages, including modern Chinese, talk about time.
So it really drives home that metaphor isn't just decoration. It's fundamental to how we even form concepts, understand them, how we talk. Lakoff even said a language with truly no metaphors would be impossibly complex to learn.
It's like the operating system for conceptual thought, which leads us to the next layer. If metaphors connect concepts, where do the first concepts come from? What exists before metaphor?
Good question. If abstract stuff like love or time needs metaphors, what's the grounding?
Well, think about little kids, preschoolers. Have you ever tried explaining yesterday or tomorrow to a 3-year-old?
Huh? Yeah, it's tricky. They mix them up all the time, but they get front and back pretty easily.
Exactly. Why? Because front and back, colors, basic shapes, these are concrete spatial concepts. They're rooted directly in their tangible sensory experience of the world. You can point, you can touch.
But yesterday is abstract. Can't point to yesterday.
Right. We understand abstract time concepts through spatial metaphors, time moving forward, the past being behind us. So Lakoff's theory is that the most basic pre-metaphorical concepts come straight from our sensory experience, just existing, moving, seeing, feeling in the world.
Our bodies in space.
Yep. And he highlights 2 key types of metaphors built right on top of that basic sensory experience. First, orientation metaphors.
Like up, down, front, back.
Exactly. In, out, center, periphery. Think about how up often means good or more. Happy is up, sad is down, health is up, sickness is down, more is up, less is down.
Okay, I see that. And time, like we said, uses front, back.
And the second type is container metaphors.
Containers, like boxes.
Sort of. Based on the experience of being in or out of things, our own bodies are containers, right? Skin is the boundary. So we extend that. Think about it. The patient is out of danger. Danger isn't literally a box, but we treat it like one.
Or the plane entered my view. My field of vision is a container.
You exist deep in my mind. The mind is a container.
Even this discussion, we're talking about the core ideas, the depth of the topic, gaining knowledge from it. We're treating this whole deep dive as a container we're pulling insights out of.
It's everywhere, isn't it? And what's fascinating is how unconscious these are. They feel natural precisely because they stem from fundamental physical experiences, not just from language we learned.
So how do these links actually get made in our brains? How does up become more or happy?
Lakoff suggests 2 main ways these connections form. First, experiential similarity.
Okay, what's that?
It's when 2 different kinds of sensory experiences just feel similar. The classic example is, your smile is sweet.
Smile is visual, sweet is taste. They're different senses.
Totally different. But the subjective feeling they evoke can be similar, right? Pleasant, warm, maybe gentle. That perceived similarity allows the metaphorical link.
Okay, makes sense. What's the second way?
Experiential concomitance. That's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah.
It just means when 2 different experiences consistently happen together at the same time.
Okay.
More is up. Think about it physically. You stack books. What happens?
The pile gets higher. More books, higher pile.
Right. You pour water into a glass, the level goes
up. More water, level goes up.
Exactly. Conversely, if a bucket leaks, the water level goes down. Less water, level goes down. So the experiences of more and up or less and down very often occur together in our physical interactions with the world.
Ah, I see. So that constant pairing creates the mental link, the metaphor, like prices went up or temperature dropped.
Or even he's feeling up today versus I'm feeling down. There's often a physical correlation, posture, energy levels that links mood and vertical orientation.
So both the basic building blocks, orientation, containers, and the ways we connect them, similarity, happening together, they all come back to our bodies and senses.
Precisely. This ties directly into what's now called embodied cognition. The idea that thinking isn't some abstract, separate thing happening only in the brain. It's deeply connected to and shaped by our physical bodies and how we experience the world. Metaphor is like the the conversion mechanism.
Turning concrete feelings and actions into abstract thoughts.
And then building more complex thought on top of that. It really positions metaphor as a fundamental thinking ability, not just a language thing.
And this isn't just Lakoff's theory anymore, right? Scientists have actually tested this.
Oh, yeah. Cognitive scientists have run experiments. For example, they've shown that when people talk about time, they spontaneously make gestures mapping it onto space.
Like pointing back for the past, forward for the future.
Exactly. Or left-right, depending on cultural conventions sometimes. But the point is, there's an unconscious spatial mapping happening tied to our bodily orientation, even when just thinking about time. It's not purely logical.
Right. That experiential similarity thing, sweet smile.
Mm-hmm.
Logically, it's nonsense. Taste isn't vision.
It's a formal fallacy if you approach it with pure logic. But cognitively, it's incredibly powerful. It shows this underlying metaphorical process defines so much of human thought. Maybe imperfect, maybe messy, but incredibly effective.
Wow. Okay, so metaphor structures language, it structures thought.
Mm-hmm.
Where else does it reach? You mentioned civilization.
Yeah, that's the third big pillar. This seemingly imperfect ability rooted in our bodies is actually the bedrock of our entire spiritual and cultural world, everything from ancient poetry to modern mathematics, even politics.
Okay, literature seems obvious. Metaphor is kind of its lifeblood.
Totally. Think about something foundational like the Chinese Book of Songs, the Xijing. It's
Mhm.
thousands of years old. The very first poem, Guan Guan Juji, famously starts with the sound of birds by the river. Guan Guan cry the ospreys on the islet in the river, and immediately links that sound to a young man's deep longing for a modest, retiring fair damsel.
So that's like the experiential concomitants again.
Yeah.
Linking the natural scene and the human emotion.
Exactly. In Chinese literary tradition, they call this technique bai xing, comparison and arousal. It's core to the whole poetic tradition, using the concrete world to evoke abstract feeling. It shows how ancient and fundamental this way of thinking is.
Okay, poetry makes sense. But you said mathematics. How can math, the peak of logic, be metaphorical? That sounds counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But Lakoff tackled this too in a later book called Where Mathematics Comes From. He argues compellingly, I think, that even math relies on fundamental metaphors.
Such as?
A really basic one is numbers are points on a line.
The number line. Yeah, we all learned that.
Right. But think about what that is. It's using our understanding of physical space, aligned with order, direction, distance between points, to conceptualize abstract numbers.
Huh. So it's another spatial metaphor, just like we use for time.
Essentially, yes. Grounding abstract quantity in concrete spatial experience. Lakoff argues that without foundational metaphors like this, building complex mathematical systems would be incredibly difficult, maybe impossible. How else do you grasp the infinity of numbers or concepts like sets without metaphorical grounding?
Wow. Okay, my mind is kind of blown thinking about math that way. So literature, math.
Yeah.
What about politics?
Ah, yes. Lakoff famously applied this lens to politics in his book, Moral Politics. He looked at American political discourse, particularly the differences between conservatives and liberals, or Republicans and Democrats.
Okay, how did metaphor fit in there?
He argued that the deep differences often stem from fundamentally different, largely unconscious core metaphors for the nation or for society. For conservatives, he identified a dominant metaphor of the strict father family.
Strict father. Meaning?
Emphasis on authority, discipline, self-reliance, personal responsibility, moral strength. The idea is the world is dangerous, and the father figure needs to protect the family, teach right from wrong, and enforce rules for the children's own good so they become self-disciplined adults.
Okay, and that translates to political views favoring.
Strong defense, individual accountability, free markets seen as a form of discipline, clear moral lines, less emphasis on social safety nets because that might create dependency.
Right, and for liberals or Democrats.
He proposed the core metaphor is the nurturant parent family.
Nurturant parent, so more focus on.
Empathy, care, protection, fairness, communication, helping others achieve their potential. The world is complex, and parents should nurture their children, protect them from harm, empower them, and build a supportive community.
Which leads to policies emphasizing.
Social programs, environmental protection, equality, diplomacy, government intervention to ensure fairness and opportunity. It's about collective well-being and systemic solutions.
It's fascinating to think these deep metaphors might structure political worldviews, just reporting on his analysis here, of course.
Absolutely. The point isn't which is right, but how these unconscious metaphorical frameworks shape what seems natural or common sense politically. And it wasn't just academic. Remember Howard
The
Dean?
politician, yeah, ran for president in 2004.
There was that whole story about him hiring Lakoff as a sort of language coach during his campaign, trying to understand and use language that resonated with the underlying metaphors of potential voters, shows the real-world implications people saw in this theory.
It really does. So summing it all up, Lakoff's work suggests metaphor isn't just some optional extra in language. It's not an exaggeration to say it's, well, almost everything.
It forces a fundamental rethink of human thought. We aren't just logical machines. We are deeply, profoundly metaphorical creatures. Language, literature, math, politics, they're all surface manifestations of this core cognitive ability.
Okay, let's quickly recap the key takeaways from this deep dive into metaphors we live by.
First, metaphor isn't just for poets. It's absolutely essential for constructing concepts and making language work at all. Can't really talk or think complexly without it.
Second, it's a core thinking ability, fundamentally tied to our bodies and sensory experience. It's how we bridge the gap from concrete reality to abstract thought.
Right. Without it, complex abstract thinking might just not be possible for us.
And third, this ability is the hidden foundation of, well, pretty much human civilization. From our earliest stories to our most complex sciences and even our political divides. No metaphor, no civilization as we know it.
It's a powerful conclusion.
Which leaves us with a really interesting, maybe slightly unsettling final thought to ponder, especially thinking about the future.
Okay.
If metaphor is so deeply fundamentally tied to our bodies, to our sensory experience of being in the world, feeling warmth, seeing shapes, moving through space, what does this mean for artificial intelligence?
The AI question. That's a big one in light of this theory.
We hear about AI getting better and better at language. A robot might even be programmed to say, "I hurt." But can it ever truly understand pain, the concept of pain, if it doesn't have a body that can actually feel pain?
That's the crux of the issue, isn't it? If metaphors are built on experiential similarities, like a smile feeling sweet, or on physical correlations like more being up, how can an AI, without a body experiencing the world, ever truly grasp these connections? Can it develop genuine metaphorical thinking?
Some AI researchers, like Professor Pfeiffer mentioned in the sources, seem skeptical about current approaches just focusing on chess or driving or chatbots. They suggest that might not lead to true human-like intelligence precisely because it lacks embodiment.
The idea being that maybe, just maybe, the path to truly intelligent AI isn't just bigger brains, but bodies. Machines that can physically interact with the world, experience it directly, stack blocks, feel warmth, maybe even taste data in some analogous way.
It's a wild thought. That perhaps only by living and experiencing the world, sensorially, like us, could an AI begin to build the metaphorical foundations needed for truly human-like understanding.
So the question we leave you with is, if we did build such a robot, one with a brain and a body capable of rich sensory experience, would it finally possess this profound, messy, powerful, metaphorical thinking ability that seems to make us who we are?
Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.